Welcome back, fellow gamers. I want to talk to you today about my top 5 cards that I'm excited for in Hour of Devastation, with the implications that they'll have for me in Commander. So this is going to be my personal top 5 list. It might vary depending on the playstyle of your play group and how competitive you guys are or how cutthroat. A lot of things go into it, so this is really my top 5 list. I don't think I can stress that enough. Every time I do a top 5 list, I get roasted. So without further ado, we're going to jump in. At 5, we're looking at Ramunap Excavator. So this is essentially Crucible of Worlds on a stick. You may play land cards from your library. Why do I like this? Well, I like the fact of having redundancy. So having another Crucible of Worlds effect in my decks, and it fits into the right color that I would want with green. Definitely being able to play fetch lands over and over again is exciting. But not only that, I will sometimes run a Naya deck that focuses on getting lands into the graveyard, or I'm sacrificing my lands, and having a way to bring them back is great. So having an extra ability to do that, fabulous. Definitely Crucible of Worlds fits into more decks because it's colorless, but I like, again, the fact of having some redundancy here. So it's not anything that's world shattering in terms of a new effect, but it's an effect that we actually don't get that often. So, exciting times. At number 4, we have Razzaq, the Foul-Blooded. So I really like this card. Definitely costs a lot at 8 mana. It's an 8/8, has Flying and Trample. But I like the fact that you can pay 2 life, sack a creature, and then tutor it for something. So definitely, if I'm comparing them to, let's say, Griselbrand, if I had to choose, I'd still probably run Griselbrand over this new demon that we're getting. But I like the fact that it's different. It's a different card where we can get a good sack outlet. It's a big body, so it can go toe-to-toe with a lot of the other creatures that you might see play in the format, and enabling those sacrifice effects. So if you have a bunch of creatures that either need to be in the graveyard, or you have a great way of reanimating them. So like, let's say in a Carador deck, you have a continuous way of triggering enter the battlefield abilities, or you have a way of triggering when a creature dies. This is a really good way of going. It's nothing that screams exciting or innovative, but I just like the tutor abilities. At number 3, we have Hour of Devastation. I really like this. All creatures lose indestructible until end of turn. So the Theros gods, which we often see play, in my playgroup at least, will now be subject to removal. But not only that, I find that white weenies oftentimes go for the indestructibility route. So whether it's through Avacyn, Archangel of Hope, or some other means, dealing 5 damage is a great way of them just getting out there. So a lot of, let's say, maybe 1/1, 2/2, or 3/3 soldiers that have been boosted somehow will now go to the graveyard and then disappear because they're all tokens. That's one thing I'm really excited about. Definitely there are a lot of board wipes that are better than this. This does cost 5 mana, but the key for me here is all creatures lose indestructible until end of turn, and just being able to wipe the board of a lot of weenie creatures that might have been protected somehow through indestructibility. I'm really for this. I think it's exciting. It's one of the cards. I think I might actually use this in a lot of my red decks. So we'll see. We'll definitely see. The early prognosis is favorable. At number 2, we have the Scarab God. So I really like this because it's a blue-black general possibility or commander possibility that does not revolve around milling. Now, what it does do is it allows you to fill up your graveyard, or just playing black-blue, you'll probably get some stuff that goes into the graveyard regardless, and then you can exile a target creature from a graveyard, and then you create a copy that ends up being a 4/4. So if you still want to play the mill game, you can, but it's also zombie focused, which I really like. So the first ability is at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. So you are draining them based on your zombies. So whether that's from casting zombies that you might be putting in your deck, or by just creating all these zombies from the ability. Now, it does cost 4 mana, so yeah, that can be quite intensive, But think about getting a really good creature that's not just a token. Yes, it's a token, but it's not just like a vanilla token that's like a 2/2 zombie. It's, a 4/4, which is nothing to sneer at, but it has upside. It has the abilities of a creature. It has the abilities that might be game breakers. So think of, for some reason I'm always thinking of Consecrated Sphinx. I don't know why, but imagine having Consecrated Sphinx that you've gotten away from one of your opponents. You now have it. It's exiled, so there's no recursion ability. Maybe you have an Inferno Titan, a Sun Titan. Who knows? You have little bomb creatures that are really good, and you can back that up with if you're having players discard their cards. You're in a really good situation. I'm a big fan of this. I think that this is going to provide a kind of new way for Black-Blue to play. It's not going to be completely game breaker where you're just milling. But here there's milling with a purpose. So it's not maybe milling to win, like having somebody get rid of their whole deck. You're harvesting the best things from their deck. And I think that is also really flavorful, right? If we look at Nicol Bolas' Army of Eternals, he was culling the best warriors from Amonkhet. And that's essentially what you're doing from this guy's ability, the Scarab God. You're culling the best creatures from your opponent's deck. I love flavor wins. So that's why this is at number 2, not only for its playability, but for its flavorfulness. So before we get to number 1, I want to go, and I guess 2 honorable mentions. There are 2 cards that I had highlighted, but I didn't want to slot into the top 5. And the first one is Unesh, Crystal Sphinx Sovereign. Cryos, I don't know how to pronounce that. But I like that this is a possible commander if you want to run a Sphinx tribal deck. Now, there aren't that many Sphinxes that are playable, and a lot of the times because they have a high cost, but here we're reducing their cost by 2. But not only that, whenever Unesh comes into play, or another Sphinx enters the battlefield under your control, reveal the top 4 cards of your library, and opponent separates those cards into 2 piles, and then you decide on which pile to put into your hand. I like that. I like the fact that you're going to be consistently taking cards from the top of your deck and then playing them, or not playing them, but putting them to your hand. So that for me is an interesting alternative. And then just having something that really speaks to a Sphinx tribal deck. Now, people have made Sphinx tribal in the past, but I found the generals weren't really they weren't supportive 100%. Like people would use, an artifact sub theme. And I think this is a really good starting point for a Sphinx tribal deck. I'm interested to see how I'll play with this. I'm definitely going to make a deck and see how it performs, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Now, the other honorable mention is Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh. So I love running my Super Friends deck. The way I normally go about it is I drop my Planeswalkers when I am able to pretty much ultimate them as soon as they come out, whether it's through doubling season or something like that. Nicol Bolas is able to do that right off the bat. If he drops in with doubling season, he has 14 counters on him, minus 12 exile each non-land permanent your opponent's control. That's devastating. I also do like his plus ability though. So target opponent exiles a card from the top of his or her library until he or she exiles a non-land card. So that guarantees that you're going to get a non-land card, because nothing sucks more than doing something like that and getting a land card and you can't do anything with it, and you're kind of helping your opponent by getting rid of useless land cards near the end of the game. So being able to cast it without paying its mana cost is also great. So I really like that as a plus ability. Yeah, there's a significant mana investment at 7 mana. It's 1 less than Nicol Bolas' Planeswalker, which is cool. So with those 2 honorable mentions out of the way, we get to my top card, which is Overwhelming Splendor. I love this card. Yeah, it costs 8, but it's enchant player, so it's a curse. Creatures enchanted player control lose all abilities and have a base power and toughness of 1/1. That's exactly like Humility, except it's one-sided. So that's really cool. I really like that. That makes it so that, whereas when you're playing Humility, you were also getting rid of, the abilities and the toughness and all that of your own creatures. This is one-sided, so it's an extra 4 mana to be able to do it one-sided, but then there's also the other ability where enchanted player can't activate abilities that aren't mana abilities or loyalty abilities. So it neuters their planeswalkers, which for me is worth the extra 4 mana, let alone the fact that it's only a one-sided effect. But if they have artifacts or enchantments, that in itself is really good. This is a really hoser card, but I also look at it and I want to combine it with Curse of Death's Hold. So you're making your opponent's creatures be 1/1s, but then you're giving creatures enchanted player controls -1/-1. Again, this is a card that is, I think, powerful. I really like it. I like the art too. Anyways, those are my top 5 cards from Hour of Devastation for Commander. I would love to know what your top 5 cards are or what you think of my list. Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, if you'd like to check out some of my other videos, you can do that on screen. There's an annotation. And if you'd like to subscribe, which would really help the channel out, but it also lets you know when we upload new MTG content. You can do that right to the right. I'd like to thank you for making me a part of your day, and until next time, good gaming.